Hello and welcome to my academy. Students, this is the part 5th of our lecture series, that's cell as a fundamental unit of life. Okay, today we are gonna to talk about the differences between the prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Okay, पहले हम देखेंगे प्रोकैरियोटिक सेल्स क्या होती है और बाद में हम देखेंगे जानेंगे कि यूकैरियोटिक सेल्स के बारे में. प्रोकैरियोटिक मीन्स द प्रिमिटिव सेल. ठीक है, prokaryotic itself designates that it is a primitive cell. The eukaryotic cell, that means the true cell. Okay, prokaryotic cell which lacks the true nucleus, the eukaryotic cell which contains the true nucleus. Okay, also known as eukaryotic means eukaryotic means true nucleus. Okay, the best example of the prokaryotic cells are bacteria and archaea. The example of the eukaryotic cells are the plants, the animals and the fungi. Okay, the only difference between the first difference between the prokaryotic cells and the eukaryotic cells, that the prokaryotic or the primitive cells, the example is the bacteria, and eukaryotic cells which contain the well developed nucleus, well defined nucleus or true nucleus are called the eukaryotic cells. Okay, the second difference, the cell wall of the prokaryotic cell is made up of the peptidoglycan or the proteoglycan. The outer membrane, the outer covering of a cell, the cell wall. In case of the bacteria, it's made up of the peptidoglycan. Okay, the protein layer or the protein. Okay, it's made up of the proteins. And the second difference between the prokaryotic and the eukaryotic cell is that the eukaryotic cell wall, it is made up of, the cell wall is composed of the polysaccharides, the chitin in fungi and cellulose in the plants. In plants, the cell wall is made up of the cellulose. In case of the animals, it's made up of the polysaccharides, but in case of the fungi, it's made up of the chitin. Okay, the third difference, that's the cell membrane bears the respiratory enzymes. In case of the prokaryotic organisms, the respiration takes place at the cell membrane, or the cell membrane bears the respiratory pigments or respiratory enzymes. But in case of the eukaryotic organisms which possess the true nucleus, the respiration or the respiratory enzymes are present in the inner membrane of the mitochondria, which is also called the powerhouse of the cell. That means the respiration or the respiratory enzymes are present on the inner membrane of the mitochondria. This is the difference between the respiration in case of the prokaryotes and the respiration in case of the eukaryotes. The ribosomes of the prokaryotes are 70S ribosomes, and the ribosomes of the eukaryotic cells are 80S ribosomes. This 80S and 70S, it depends upon the rate of sedimentation. Okay, the sedimentation coefficient. तो कौन सबसे ज़्यादा settle हो जाएगा, on the basis of this sedimentation rate, we call the ribosomes as 70S and 80S ribosomes. Okay, in case of the prokaryotes, they lack the membrane bound organelles. चलो हम देखेंगे कि membrane bound organelles क्या होता है. For example, in case of the prokaryotes or in case of the eukaryotes, we have the membrane bound organelles. Like the mitochondria, it has its own membrane. The nucleus, it has its own membrane. There is the proper compartmentization, or we can say compartments are there. The cells are in compartments. For example, the nucleus has its own membrane, the ribosome has its own membrane, the mitochondria has its own membrane. But in case of the prokaryotic organisms, they lack these membranes. Okay, they don't have the well-defined membranes or membrane-bound organelles, we can say. And the fifth is, in case of the prokaryotic cells, the DNA, that is the genetic material, it is circular. Okay, the circular DNA is there. The genetic material, that is the DNA, it is circular, and this circular DNA is also called the theta DNA. Okay, the replication in this DNA is called the theta replication, we can say. But in case of the eukaryotic cells, the DNA or the genetic material, it is linear. Okay, and this was all about the difference between the prokaryotic cells and the eukaryotic cells. Okay, thank you. Have a nice day.